Hello and welcome to a new lesson, Competence and Performance by Noam Chomsky. In this lesson, we will talk about origin of competence and performance, general meaning of competence and performance, linguistic meaning of competence and performance, and difference between linguistic competence and linguistic performance. Let's talk about this concept in detail. Let's first talk about origin of competence and performance. Noam Chomsky, an American linguist, introduced these two terms in linguistics with the publication of his book Aspects of the Theory of Syntax in 1965. And you can have a look at this book, Aspects of the Theory of Syntax. General meaning of competence. What do we mean by competence in our general term, in our general understanding? What does this word mean to us? What does it refer to us? The first point is, if you look at the dictionary, what you find is that competence generally means the quality of being competent, the quality of being skillful, or further we can add the quality of being knowledgeable. In other words, being in possession of required skill, knowledge, qualification, or capacity is known as competence. Means you are very skillful, you are very competent, you are knowledgeable, you are in possession of the required skill in that particular field, so we can call you to be competent in that area of knowledge. That is basically the general meaning of competent. The question is, can we do something without being competent? Can we perform well without being competent? I think, of course, we cannot. If we want to do well in any branch of knowledge, in any field of activity, you need to be skillful. You need to be competent. You need to be confident. You need to have a good understanding of that branch of knowledge. The same idea of what we generally understand about competence applies to the fundamental concept of linguistic meaning of competence. How? Let's see. Linguistic meaning of competence, it refers to the native speaker's knowledge of his language, the mastery of the system of rules of language, being competent in the possession of language skill, being skillful in using the structure of language. In other words, we can say your internal power to generate grammatical sentences endlessly, creatively. Further, we can add and polish this idea, the biological potential of a person to comprehend the internal organization of how language works, how language functions. In other words, your brain being in possession of knowledge of language skill, linguistic skill. This basically refers to the linguistic meaning of competence. Can we understand something without being competent in language? Can we speak something without being skillful in language? Can we write something without being enlightened in language? Of course not. Without being skillful, being competent, being enlightened in overall knowledge of how language works, we as a speaker cannot express well. We as a writer cannot express well. Therefore, what we come to the point is that linguistic competence is your brain, where your knowledge of language resides, lives, where your knowledge of language is stored. This is basically the idea behind the philosophy of linguistic competence. And you can see this is your brain, where all knowledge of language is stored. And with the capacity and potential and the power of the knowledge of your linguistic skill, you can be a very good speaker. You can be a very good writer, you can be a very good poet, you can be what you want to be through the expression of language. This happens as far as our native language is concerned. This idea, what Noam Chomsky terms it linguistic competence, Saussure refers to this as Langue. Why? Because according to him, regarding Langue, Saussure 2004 once had a clear definition. It is a treasure house stored in all members of a social group through the practice of a speech or a grammatical system stored in the minds of a group of people. So with this definition, we come to know how linguistic competence is very close to what is described by Saussure as language. I think in this brief lecture, you understand what really competence or linguistic competence is all about and how is it similar to that of Saussure's idea of language. General meaning of performance. In our day-to-day life, the word performance refers to the action of carrying out a task, the process of accomplishing a goal, that is to say, how well a person or machine performs. In other words, the manner of executing an action to attain an objective. Can a machine perform something without being competent? Can a person attain something without being skillful? Of course not. We need something as a quality hidden in us to perform a task intelligently. We continue to move our discussion. Now we talk about linguistic meaning of performance. The same idea of general meaning of performance could be applied to a great extent the linguistic meaning of performance. How? Let's see. It is the actual use of language in concrete situations. It is the observable aspect of language, being in possession of linguistic ability to perform it diligently. Further, we can add being skillful in using the structure of language. That is to say, your power to express in linguistic terms the outward ability of a person to communicate effectively. So what we come to the conclusion about performance is that linguistic performance helps you to be a good speaker, a good orator. You express yourself, to be a good writer. You express your language in a beautiful way, in a written form. Helps you to be a good poet. You beautify the language. You decorate the language. The competence of language that you have possessed helps you to be a great artistic person in terms of linguistic expression. That is the point here. And this is what Saussure refers to this as parole. And regarding parole, Saussure pointed out it is the embodiment or actualization of language. Performance is the implementation of competence. In other words, parole is the expression of language. Now we move on to see the difference between linguistic competence and linguistic performance. The first point is linguistic competence is about the mastery of the system of rules, while linguistic performance is about the actual use of the system of rules. We have the next point. It is about knowing a language. It is about using a language. Linguistic competence, it is abstract as it originates in the mind of the person. Linguistic performance, it is concrete as it is reflected through linguistic behavior. Linguistic competence is a receptive skill, while linguistic performance is an expressive skill. Linguistic competence belongs to the society, while linguistic performance belongs to the individual in the form of a speaker, poet, writer, and so on. Language system is competence, while language behavior is performance. Saussure refers it to langue. Saussure refers it to parole. Hope you understand the concept. Thank you and goodbye.